Hello. Well, you may recall if you watched yesterday's video about the Philips 750 that I did mention that my work ethic is not always the greatest. So you may therefore be surprised to find me doing a bonus video on a Sunday. But it's a nice day, and I've been to the Retrotech UK fair, which used to be called the National Vintage Communications Fair. I came back with a couple of new pieces of kit, and fortunately I haven't been locked out of the house as a result. So we're going to look at one of them. There isn't really any repair to do on it, and I don't imagine from what you can see here that you can guess what it is yet, although that now discredited phrase might give you a clue. But first of all, I'm going to look at this mains plug that it's attached to it, and as you can see, it's in a rather fetching sort of gold finish, and it's one of these old things that hasn't got a proper screw on it. It's just got this little one-turn thing, or a quarter-turn thing, that you open it up with, which in itself seems to me a bit dodgy. And then you do that, you can just lift the top off. So yeah, then the top comes off. You can see how old it is by the colours in here, the old red, green and black. This is a pretty appalling mains plug, I think, and it's also got a 13 amp fuse. I don't think this radio needs a 13 amp fuse, so what I'm going to do is get a proper new style plug and put a 3 amp fuse in it, and then we'll get started. Right, so with all that health and safety stuff out of the way, we can do the big reveal. And here it is. It's a Kriesler 1199. Now, something about Kriesler. First of all, no relation to the Chrysler which made American cars. Secondly, you'll notice it's spelt Kriesler. At least that's what it would appear to look like to me with a sort of basic knowledge of German. In fact, the company was named after one of the founders' heroes, who was Fritz Kriesler. But they didn't want to actually use his name because they thought they might get into trouble. So they changed the I and the E around. So although it's spelt Kriesler, it's pronounced Chrysler. And you'll see that the dial markings are a little bit odd. That's because it's an Australian radio. This was an Australian brand and never imported to the UK, really. So this would have been built in Australia and somebody presumably brought it over here. And that's the other thing. If you look at Australian radios, they all have these markings. They put all the stations on. They get the call signs. So they have a number followed by something like 3AK or whatever. And it depends on which territory you're in. So if you zoom in a bit on this, you can see you've got a different scale for each state of Australia. And then this little dial, which has a lovely magnifying bit, tells you which of the stations you're on here. There's only one band, which is medium wave, or what the Aussies call the broadcast band. Now, I'm going to turn this on, and we can have a listen to it. So I've plugged it in, and you can see it lights up, but there's no sound. Why is there no sound? Was it broken? When have I ever bought a broken radio? So the fact that it took so long to come up should give you a clue what's different about this compared to the normal radios I look at. It's a valve radio. It's not a transistor radio, but it looks like a transistor radio. And this radio was produced in Australia by the Kriesler company from the mid-60s until, I kid you not, 1974. I love the fact that the Australians were still making valve radios in 1974. So I didn't do the turnaround, because obviously once you do the turnaround you realise it's a lot bigger than a normal transistor radio would be. Now, as I said, there's nothing basically wrong with this apart from the yellowing of the case, which is also dealt with by David Tipton. Now, David Tipton, his channel is in the subscribe channels or whatever that is below my channel, and I hesitate to say that he does what I do because he he actually does it properly. And he has a feature on this radio which I'll link on here now, and I'll also put the details of his channel in the comments. And I'm not going to repeat what he's done because as I said, he's obviously a lot more professional than I am, and there isn't much needed to do with this. I think we'll have a quick look in the back though, but of course, being a valve radio, it's got 100 odd volts inside it, so we probably need to unplug it before we do that. Right, plug is out. High voltages inside. Probably will still be the odd high voltage because of capacitors and things, but we'll be reasonably careful. The other thing which is interesting about it, so when you look at the back of it, apart from this little thing, I wondered what that was. Apparently it's a Made in Australia sticker. I suppose that makes sense. You've got a boomerang and Southern Cross. And then you've got these two screws here, which are the things you take apart to get the back off the radio, but they're labelled A and E. And this is for aerial and earth. So these two screws double up as being where you connect your external aerial. So you connect onto that, put a wire into there, and then put that wire down to earth if you wanted an external aerial. If you had that, of course, then the handle wouldn't be of much use. But it does work, obviously, without the aerial. So let's just have a look in the back anyway. So there it is with the back off, and as you can see, it's a fairly simple sort of affair, really. It's in a much better state than the one that was on Mr. Tipton's channel when he got hold of it. And there's a couple of things. I noticed the wire here. This is very negligible connection, I think, to the aerial, so that probably needs tidying up a little bit. This point here is isolated from the chassis, so the aerial goes onto here, and then this point actually is the earth, and that is on the chassis. You've got a power transformer here, the mains transformer. You've got the output transformer for the speaker, which is sort of stuck onto the back of it, that comes off the output valve. Now, there are only 3 valves in here. When I say there are 3 valves, there are 3 physical valves, although if we look at the diagram, we can see that there are some valves got multiple electrodes in them, like this 6GB8 here. The odd thing is it shows 4 valves on this diagram. So it shows this 6V4, which will be a rectifier valve. And I don't see that. We can see that this point here is where that valve would be, I think. So I'm guessing that they took that out and replaced it with an ordinary diode. In other words, a solid state diode. So this must be one of the later models, I guess. They decided not to bother with that. Presumably, you have to modify the circuit a bit, because I know that when you replace rectifier valves with solid state rectifiers, you have to be a little bit careful, because the solid state rectifier doesn't warm up like the other valves. Therefore, the power comes on straight away and can damage the valves. So I'm guessing they did some mod to the circuit to avoid that from happening. Anyway, there it is, and you can see the little bulb there at the back, which shows which illuminates the dial. You've got the tiniest ferrite rod in the world, actually, for the aerial. It's quite small, but it seems to work, So what's to criticise, really? So yeah, there's nothing to do with this. I just thought I'd show you something that I'd picked up at a morning out at the show.